Okay, well, thank you for having me. And let me go ahead and start. Real quick, who am I? Lucas, W6AER. And just some of you I know, I recognize some of the people in Zoom, but so basically I'm a DXer mostly, but I do everything. 310 entities, worked actually a little more now. And I basically work everything from HF all the way down to even low in the HF and 6 meters is where you'll find me. And I love HF satellite work, SDR technology, and I really like playing around with rare digital modes. That's basically my main interest lately, beyond FT8 and FT4. And on the non-radio side, you probably noticed I sound a little funny. I was born in Europe and essentially been working in IT for the past, actually close to 30 years now. And I also run a side business doing IT, and I love travel and photography. Both came in really handy for this book, actually. Okay, so why in the world did I decide to do this? Well, so really, when I decided to get relicensed and I got into DXing, I really couldn't find. I really struggled. I couldn't find anything that that was actually written for me, if you will. There was a lot of things out there that were dated, things that talked about things that were not necessarily related to DXing. And honestly, there was a lot of bad information out there too, I found out later. And I decided that I took good notes. And essentially, I set out to write the book that I wanted to have when I started DXing. And as I always tell people, there are many ways of doing this. This is one way. This is my journey. Just the way that I do things. There are other proper ways of doing things, but essentially, I documented what I know from personal experience that works. And I'm going to be covering 3 selected topics from the book, by the way, just a little background. So basically, when I started, I did not realize how big this project was going to be. And I'm kind of going through the same thing now. I'll talk about that in a little bit because I'm doing a follow-up on satellites. And it's taking me a lot longer than I expected, but that's okay. I'd rather have quality over quantity. And the book really ballooned out of size. I mean, it ended up being 290 pages, but that's after reformatting and having and basically making it an 8x10 book versus a smaller, which is a smaller book size, which is standard. And that was close to 400 pages, I think. So I had to reformat it, resize it, just to make it a little more palatable for people because the printing cost goes up and I would have had to charge more. So I was trying to keep the price low. And basically, here we go. So basically, I tried to cover everything. Obviously, I didn't cover everything, but I tried to cover everything I could think of. There are a few things that if I ever do a second edition, I would put in. But essentially, A to Z, I covered antennas, balance, hardware, software. A lot of emphasis on software because that's one thing I noticed a lot of books were lacking. Getting up your station setup and grounding, and I have a little asterisk next to that. I'll talk about that later. I am covering it, but it's one of those highly debated topics. Working split, all 3 modes, meaning phone, CW, and digital. And I cover all the way from getting set up to how to QSL, designing your QSL cards on your own, and saving a lot of money on printing and things like that. And of course, I cover a couple of things that were a little more advanced so that people who have been DXing can benefit from this too. And, RFI, basically pilot techniques, a little more advanced pilot techniques. Really, FT8, FT4, which I think everybody's on now. I do cover possible awards you can get. And what I consider to be the most important section, and you're going to laugh, but it's how not to be a lid, because there's a lot of bad operating out there. And so I definitely covered that. What I did not cover is products I did not like or recommend because I didn't want to badmouth anybody. But I did, I guess I tend to be opinionated, but I just basically neglected to cover them. And what works for me or doesn't work for me may be the opposite for you. So I kind of left that topic alone. But so you're not going to see everything covered as far as products necessarily. Them I had bad experiences with, so I left them out. But I did try and keep a positive tone, of course, and I did have to tone it down a little bit. Beta readers gave me some feedback, and I adjusted it a little bit. They said I was being a little too honest, whatever that means, and so I did kind of tone it down a little bit. Okay. So here's what I was going for. Basically, I was trying to balance, valuable information, but I wanted to keep it affordable. And those were the two things which made it really tricky because size balloons out of control. The book gets expensive. I also didn't want to cut anything because then the book is worthless, or at least not as people wouldn't get their money's worth. So it was a real challenge, and a lot of it came down to editing and formatting and so on. So how did these things come about, these topics? So essentially, some of you are here, I know, from the San Francisco Radio Club. I recognize Dave and a couple of others. But yeah, basically I was Elmering at the San Francisco Radio Club as well as some other clubs. And as Mike already mentioned, I have the W6AR website, and I get a lot of questions there and many repeats. And if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day, you know what I'm talking about. And I also follow a lot of email discussions like the NCDXC, NCCC, the Contest Club. And I see, again, a lot of the same questions, especially from newcomers. So I took notes. And I'm also part of a lot of Ham Slack workspaces. SFARC has one, there's VHF Chat, a few others. Actually, I just set one up for NCDXC a month ago, so there's a couple of others. Discord channels, online user groups, Google groups, Facebook amateur radio groups. I kind of follow them, not necessarily closely, but I follow them enough when something interesting pops up, and I see the same questions. So basically, I started with these questions as an outline, essentially, for the book. Okay, so let's dive into that. So I picked 3 different areas that I wanted to cover just briefly. These are actually taken from the book with some adjustments to make them work in PowerPoint. One is about the WSJTX, which is what people use for FT8 and FT4 waterfall adjustments, which I recommend people do. A lot of people have done this and they really think it helps them. Some add-ons for the above, which is going to help people who are digital operators to eliminate duplicates. So you don't work the same people over and over again, not realizing it. Also, it alerts you to things that you need because it's hooked into your logbook, assuming you have an electronic logbook. And finally, a really interesting topic, at least to me, which is ferrites. And ferrites are a little different animal, if you will, not no pun intended. But basically, I got into them trying to reduce noise in my shack, and I'll cover it in a little more. Okay. All right. So hopefully we have a lot of digital users here, but essentially, what I'm talking about here is if you're using WSJTX or any other similar software, because there's a couple of clones, if you will, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. For DXing, I noticed, especially 6 meters, or also when it's a really busy band condition, like on 20 meters, for example, when it opens up, the waterfall is a little too slow and a little too wide. And what I found is that by default, it doesn't actually show you the whole 3 kilohertz. And also it's so slow that you start transmitting in what you think is an open spot, but because of the slowness of the waterfall, you might be on top of somebody, and you might also be missing out on some things. And I also noticed that a lot of DX actually like to transmit on the edges. And while it does decode, assuming that your bandpass filter is wide enough or set wide enough, you might be missing some things. So what I recommended here is to and the and average down here on the, you see it on the bottom left, essentially 2-1. And what this does, it basically drops it to almost real-time speed, where you're not going to see as many cycles, which you really don't need to see 6 or 7 cycles back. You just need to see the last 2, maybe 3 even, or at max. And but it gives you a much faster uh, way of analyzing what's actually going on real time. And here's an example of how I have this set up. So here's what I usually do when I'm working DX. And this is my desktop. I use a Flex radio, so I have a couple of different what they call slices running. And on the left, you'll see, for example, on the left, this was 30, yeah, it was 30 meters, sorry. And on the right side, so this must have been at night, I usually monitor 160 meters. And you notice the waterfall, I'm managing to squeeze in a little over 3 kilohertz actually underneath on both to be able to glance over, see what's happening, where I can jump in and transmit in case I need to. What I do is during the day, the second window is on 6 meters, and when the sun sets, usually I switch my second window over to 160 meters. And that's usually my monitoring that I have a separate antenna on. So this kind of shows you how I have my workspace set up. Underneath it, what you're looking at is JTDX, and I'll be talking, I'm sorry, not JTDX, JT Alert, which I'll be talking about in a minute. And this is just a little, so this is on the Flex radio. Those who have a Flex radio, you probably recognize this. This is the Smart SDR software, well, a part of it. I just captured a little window here. And so here's the, here is a 3 kilohertz slice, essentially what I'm looking at. And here's a little tip that I wanted to give to people. If you are calling a station and you're pretty sure that you should be heard, but you're calling on the flip side, let's say above the 1.5 kilohertz, there's a good chance they're using a really setting, which means it's a lot narrower than what they should be using, and they might not be hearing you. Moving on the other side will allow you to usually communicate with them or make the contact. This is something I see a lot, especially overseas. And I also observe some people operating like on YouTube videos and so on. And I see that a lot of people don't actually expand out to the full 3 kilohertz. So they might not be hearing you. So try and move down to one side or the other. So what I do is I actually set my window to 4 to 6 kilohertz. And here's why. I often seen DX in busy conditions move above 3 kilohertz. And there were times that I jumped in, worked them, and nobody else even realized they were there. And I got, text message saying, hey, how did you work that guy? I didn't even see the other end. Because sometimes there is DX that actually goes up above 3 kilohertz. So if you have the ability to monitor a little wider, you might get some pleasant surprises. Let's leave it at that. It happened to me several times. I've even gotten an Atno once doing that. Okay. So this is actually something I just put up a video on. And FRStax 3 is actually a plugin for the Flex radio, and those who have it care. Those who don't, just stand by for 1 second because I did want to talk about this. If you looked on the slide before, you noticed there were some spots on my overlay of spots on my waterfall display. And essentially, the way that I did that is using this plugin. And a lot of people have asked me about this. And just recently, about 2, 3 weeks ago, I actually did a YouTube video on this. So if you're interested, you can go and look. I go over in detail on how to install it and configure this. So WSJTX is not the only. Actually, just called JT Alert a minute ago. JTDX is probably the second most popular alternative to WSJTX. Some people feel it decodes better. Some think WSJTX does better. Some people like the interface of JTDX a little more. I don't personally, but that's just me. MSHV is out there. Some people use that. Usually on the DX side, basically it allows multi-stream. The enhanced version of WSJTX is actually rather nice. I do recommend that. That's fairly new. I have an asterisk here because that actually came out since my book. So that was not covered in the book, but I just wanted to make a note of it here. And then the Z has 2 versions, and that's really not something. Diversity reception essentially is what we're talking about, but that's not something that most of you would be using. And the answer is what's better? As I already said, depends on what you're looking for. Some people feel the interface on JTDX is better. I think it's a little cluttered. It depends what you like, what you're used to. Try both. I actually run both sometimes side by side. Occasionally, when I'm looking for something really weak, I get a good decode on WSJTX and JTDX will not see it, and vice versa. So running them together, if you have the ability to do that, is worth doing. Let's talk about add-ons a little bit. JT Alert is probably the most valuable add-on that I would say if you're using FT8, you really should be using that along with it. It allows you to filter. It's very highly configurable, so allows you to avoid dupes. It will actually, you can set it up so it doesn't show you stations you already worked. You can set it up to alert you to new countries, new states. You can really configure it, but what's really cool, it has a chat feature. Now, it's almost like cheating, but essentially what it does is allows you to communicate with fellow DXers, and in some cases, actually, the station you're calling. I got mixed feelings about that because, sometimes you're trying to make a contact, and all of a sudden, you're not sure, and people send you a message. I've gotten several messages saying, hey, did you get my 7.3? And sometimes I didn't. So, it could help finish the QSO, but like I said, it's a little controversial. It does have assisted logging, which is really nice, and a lot of automation you can put into it. And I don't use all the features, I'll be honest, but it is something that I do recommend. It's at hamapps.com. I'll go into it in my book in a lot more detail. A support group is here. And one thing I would say is if you're using the software, turn on the HemSpots reporting, and also on the WSJTX, always enable the PSK reporter spotting. And it will help you. It's really interesting how many people don't have it on. By default, they're not on. I turn both on, and what it does, in fact, it reports back to, let me show you the website, to a website like this. This is the PSK reporter showing you where I was heard. So this is me right there on the left side where you see the big arc, essentially. And this is blue, so I think that's the 40-meter band. I'm not sure from memory. But essentially, it shows you that I was heard as far as India, it looks like in this case, 7 minutes ago, coast of Africa, 3 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago in Europe, and of course in the United States, I was probably pretty loud everywhere. South America was picked up on 10 minutes ago. Also shows you how propagation is changing a little bit. If you hover over them, you actually get signal reports that they reported back. So if you enable this, you're actually not only able to see if you need to reduce your power, increase your power, or if your antenna works, but you actually get to see how well other people are hearing you. Are they actually hearing? Use HemSpots, and HemSpots essentially gives you two columns. One is, and this is for my call sign on the left side, calls that I spotted, meaning these are not literally spotted, but calls that I have received. And this is on 40 meters, it looks like. And these are the stations I happen to hear. And on the right side, you'll see your call spotted, meaning where I was heard. So it looks like in this case, I was heard uh, pretty much Japan, Australia, and so on. This is a longer list than what you see here, but it gives you an idea. So who did I hear and who heard me? And it's a little different view, different groups of people reporting back, but they're really, really helpful. There's also a program called Grid Tracker, which allows you to basically see virtually where, and you can do this from your logs. You can load it up, and this is really helpful if you work satellites or 6 meters, but I use it for everything. Grids that I have worked. And in this case, I think this was the 6 meters that I captured here, where I have worked different grids. But either way, Grid Tracker, if you're hunting grids, it's really, really a nice tool. You can plug it into WSJTX. I just use it with the log files, but it's more than one way to go about it. Oh, bonus tip. Those of you who are working special event stations, or if you have multiple radios, same fix. Essentially, what you got is you can have the same single install of WSJTX, but you can have multiple instances running at the same time, like you saw on my previous screen. You can also configure them for different call signs. So I could be a special event station in one WSJTX, and I could have my own call sign on the other one. And without actually completely screwing up my settings, I can literally create a new shortcut, and I'll explain this on my website. This is one of the most visited pages, by the way, on how to do this. You essentially give the rig a name, slice A, slice B, or whatever, or this could be instead of slice A, call it your special event station name. And every time you start it from that shortcut, it will be pre-configured. It will save the settings for your special event station. And then your regular instance would be your own call sign. So you don't have to redo everything all the time. It's really, really helpful. It's used a lot. This is very commonly used during field day, by the way, when you're running a different call sign, perhaps. Now, next topic that I want to talk about a little bit is the wonderful world of ferrites, and not to be confused with ferrets. Everything you see here is a ferrite. You've probably seen them all over the place. They come in all shapes and sizes. And all price ranges too, like that really big unit that you see, that the two on the right side of your screen are actually rather expensive. I think one was like $30. Those are not ones that you necessarily need for things that you're doing, but in some applications, high power applications, they might come in handy. But let me talk about them a little bit. Essentially, it's used for two different things, keeping RF in and out. And in my QTH, what I needed to do is I wanted to bring the noise levels down. The best results, and I'll talk about what I mean by that. For best results, it's actually best to loop them through. and the way that you see on this picture. That each time you make a turn, multiple turns, it essentially would be like the same as snapping on 3 or 4 different ferrets in a row. So don't need to go too crazy shopping. Just get one with a larger hole, loop it through, and you'd be amazed. But you do want to use the correct values. You probably see, I don't know if you can see it too well, there's a number 31 written on that ferrite. And let me explain what they do. Um, well, let me backtrack a little bit. What do you need them for, really? So, for example, if you have wall warts, AC or D, a lot of RF, and it shows up on your waterfall. You'll see either lines running across, you'll see all kinds of interference. If you have solar inverters, sometimes those produce noise. You can snap them on the cable in there. Or a washer and dryer, for example, that electrical cord that's coming out of our washing machine acts like an antenna. So I have ferrite snap on that. Or freezer, same thing. I mean, basically, the washing machine was so bad I could literally tell on my waterfall what cycle the washing machine was on. So ferrites really saved the day. So the two that are really valuable are the numbers 31 and 75. Those are the two most used, at least for amateur radio operators. There's also number 43 if you do VHF work, that's recommended. And essentially, the mix 77 is also good for suppression of noise, especially in the lower bands. Most of my noise issues are on 40 meters and below. In fact, it was at one point really, really bad on 40 meters where it was almost unusable. And this solved a lot of the problems. And again, if you loop through, the impedance gets squared essentially. So if you loop it through 4 times, according to the math, it's equal to 16 snap-on ferrites. So nothing wrong with looping them. And if you look at a lot of professional setups, you'll see that it's commonly done in a lot of industries. Where do you get more info on this? I mean, this is a topic that whole books have been written on. And the website that I would recommend is the audiosystemsgroup.com. I have info on this on my website as well, and links to all these. And the QRM Guru has a really good article on ferrites. And Jim Brown, K9YC, has, I don't know if anybody knows him, is really the guy who's responsible for getting me started with ferrites. Because at first, when I got back into ham radio, I said, well, I can hear just fine. And I didn't realize how much I was missing. It really cleaned up what I could hear. And there's a lot of videos on this. I have not done one yet, but I'm thinking about it. One little tip, when you get ferrites, it's very easy to forget what type of ferrites they were. One thing I do now, and I learned this the hard way because I have a whole drawer full of ferrites that I don't know the values of, is I got a silver Sharpie or a permanent marker that's something brightly colored like gold or silver. And I've now, when I get them, right away I write down right on them the values. And they seem to last because I got ferrites going back now 5-10 years that haven't, the writing hasn't come off yet. So write the values on them. And these happen to be 31s, which are the ones I use the most. So that's a little tip, because if you're getting different ferrites, or if you're getting some random ones that don't have values that you don't want to mix them up. Now, there's junk out there. So I would say be very careful with going to flea markets, Temu, things like that. eBay, again with exceptions. But for the most part, there's people who see ferrites and they say, yeah, sure, they're number 31. And they, you get them and they don't really perform like they're advertised. Polymer Engineers is definitely one of the best places, if not the best place. That's, I think, where I've gotten most of my at least important ferrites. And there's also some additional ones like DigiKey, Amidon. That's actually the one I think Jim recommends. But the key thing to remember is number 31 is for HF bands up to 300 megahertz. The number 43 is for some of the higher bands and 25 megahertz and up, but it will not cover the lower bands, which is so basically you might need a couple of different variations. For satellite work, I actually use 43s. And occasionally, or sometimes I use both. So what's next? Well, I have a couple of things happening. And let me talk about that really, really quick. By the way, if you want to know more information on any of these little topics that I touched on, there's a lot of information on my website about this too. Some of it is on the website. Most of it is in the book because that's where I give more detail. But what I'm working on now, and for a while now, because again it turned into a bigger project, is actually this. And this is the follow-up to the book that I've already published. And I was thinking, well, I finished the first book. It took me about 2-3 years. I can probably get this one done in a year. And boy, was I wrong. So I'm still working on it. One of the problems is some of the things changed as I was writing it. One of the satellites that I was really focusing on for a packet transmission essentially died. So I had to rewrite a whole chapter. And let me see. And basically what I'm covering is linear, digital, and FM satellites. International Space Station, of course, everybody knows about. Hardware and software, packet data, that was the problematic section. Modifications to certain radios, the SET PC32, which is probably the most commonly used software for tracking satellites. It also allows you to motorize your antennas and also does Doppler tracking, meaning it adjusts your frequency as the satellite approaches and passes over you. And that's something that I explain in detail. Automation, I'm really big on automation. And of course, working DX. Now, the medium orbit satellite that I wrote I got a whole chapter on that, the IO-117, well, it essentially died. So we don't have that satellite anymore, so I had to kind of go back to the drawing board on that. But I also cover weather satellites, GOES and NOAA, and a little bit on FTA, which is free-to-air TV. It's not ham radio, but a lot of people are interested in it. And if you're set up for, well, anyways, it will be in the book. And but if you want to see more about that, let me know. I can alert you when it's out. What you can help with is if you end up getting the book, or if you're interested in reading it, you can actually get it for free if you sign up for Audible, and I can show you how. Amazon and DX Engineering are the two places it's carried. I do have a contract with DX Engineering. Basically, I was asked to be exclusive with them other than Amazon, so I'm honoring that. And actually, they are my preferred vendor. So if you're getting it, that's one place to get them. I also have some shortcuts here. So if you want to get them, there's an audiobook version, which amateur radio operator in North Carolina actually helped me do the voiceover for that, and a Kindle version. If you are on Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. And if you have an Audible subscription, there's a way to do that too. So you may not have to buy it. And also, as a side note, I do have a YouTube channel, MaximumRF, which if you look for, there are select topics that I actually talk about from this book. Anyways, I guess I'm going to open this up to questions. I'm sure there's a few, or not. But This is how you can reach me if you need to reach out to me, Lucas at w6aer.com. Vitamin DX is a publishing website, and I guess let me see if there's any questions. Should I stop sharing or let me see.